We're going to be interviewing Lonnie Mixon, and he was born on January 29th of 1933 in Mobile, Alabama. And he presently resides in Fairhope, Alabama, and he served with the U.S. Coast Guard, search and rescue, and other things. And so it says here he has joined as a seaman recruit in 1951.
That's
so
right.
Lonnie, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your service.
Well, I'd gotten out of high school. I went to McGill High School in Mobile, and then went to Spring Hill College, and sort of overloaded myself with taking German, English, advanced math, and 2 chemistry classes. And at the end of the first quarter, I had failed the chemistry exam. So I said, oh, well, I've got to do something. So I went to New Orleans then and joined the Coast Guard. Came back to Spring Hill College and was walking across the campus. Father Twillmeyer, who was the chemistry teacher, says, Mixon says, I'm glad to see you passed your retake. I said, that's good. I said, well, I'm sorry, Father, it's too late. I just signed up for the Coast Guard. So that was it. Yeah. And went to boot camp in Alameda, California, and spent 3 months there. And after that was in San Diego, and San Diego to Long Beach, California. And that was the end of my first 2 or 3 years. I re-enlisted and then went to Galveston, Texas. Was on a ship there, 125-footer. And then to Mobile, Alabama on the Coast Guard cutter Pontchartrain. And from there I was selected to go to Officer Candidate School in New London, Connecticut. This was in 1958, I guess. After OCS, went to Morehead City, North Carolina on the Coast Guard cutter Cholula. We were out off of the bad areas up there off North Carolina Sea, and we were out searching, and there was a Coast Guard airplane that was flying, and it was getting close to dark, and boy, we were in rough seas, and everybody was seasick. And this airplane called up and says, listen, would you call in and tell them we're coming back in? We could be landing in about 30 minutes. I said to myself, if we were to leave on scene right now, it would take us a day to get back in. And he's going to be there in 30 minutes. Says, I'm in the wrong part of the Coast Guard. So I requested flight training and went to flight training in 1960 in Pensacola, Florida. Went through Navy flight program down in Corpus Christi. And after receiving my wings, the first station was Brooklyn, New York. Flew the Albatross, which was the seaplane up there. I was there for a year and a half. And then along came the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I was transferred to Miami as a fixed-wing pilot flying down there. And while there, then I was elected to go to helicopter training back to the Navy in Pensacola. So I spent 3 years in Miami. It was the most beautiful time flying helicopters and the Albatross fixed wing. And the Albatross, and being amphibian, we flew strictly off the water. Night time, daytime, bad weather, whatever, so that was good. Then I was selected to go to Detroit, Michigan as operations officer. We opened a new helicopter unit there. That was in 1966, I believe. In 1967, the Coast Guard came up with an helicopter exchange pilot program with the Air Force. The Air Force flying rescues in Vietnam did not have experience at water rescues with helicopters. Of course, we did. And so I volunteered for that and was selected as a helicopter pilot, a senior Coast Guard aviator, to go to Vietnam. And that was an experience being with the Air Force, going to the various schools preparatory to going to Vietnam. And spent a year there. I was 6 months in Da Nang, and then the second 6 months was in Thailand at Nakhon Phanom. And after that, I was sent back to Mobile. Then during that time, Mobile has become the cradle of aviation history for the Coast Guard. I was sent back here as an instructor, and then I retired in 1973 as an instructor pilot.
Wow.
And that was.
And what kind of equipment did you fly in Vietnam and in Mobile?
Well, in Vietnam, it was the H-3 Jolly Green Giant. It was the twin-engine amphibian helicopter. And the Coast Guard, when I got back to Mobile, the Coast Guard was just adapting into that airplane, which was the Coast Guard F-3. So the experience that I gained flying the Air Force was very good when I came back as an instructor pilot here.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, I understand there was a bit of a rescue in the Cuban Missile Crisis time. If you could give me a little bit of that. And
well, we were down then. We were Well, like I said, luckily it was flying helicopters and fixed wing, and there was an exodus, of course, of Cubans at that time, and we found many, many Cubans that were adrift in the Gulf Stream down there. So we were lucky to save quite a few people in that environment.
Mostly plucking them out of the water with the helicopter then, or?
Yes, and find them in boats. They were on boats that were overloaded. A lot of times the boats would sink because of being overloaded. A little bad weather would come in, and of course that would be the end of it. So that was primarily it.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I understand you had a couple of interesting rescue attempts in Vietnam, North Vietnam, I guess.
Yeah, I did. Well, before that was, of course, Detroit. Had some good one up there flying. It was quite a contrast from flying up in the Great Lakes, snow and icing into Vietnam, you know, the high temperatures and so forth. Yeah, there was quite, actually in Vietnam you had some good ones, you know, some exciting ones, if you will. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember, you have 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, is that correct?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Yeah. And one of them was for the Lake Huron, and
right.
One of them was for Vietnam
right.
rescue attempt, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
And you want to give me any kind of an idea what happened in the Huron ones?
Yeah, that was quite unique. We were in Detroit. Actually, we're north of Detroit, about 30 miles at Selfridge Air Force Base. That's where we were starting our Air Force, our Coast Guard base. As operations officer, every day I would come in. Back then, the communications was teletype. That's about all we had. And there was a message there that was talking about Traverse City. Coast Guard was directed to go make a rescue. There was a Nordmeer that had run aground up in Lake Huron. They had 8 sailors, German sailors aboard. And they kept saying, well, the weather's too bad. It was icing and snowing and so forth. So I watched that all day long take place, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I looked at the weather and I went to the captain. I said, Captain, maybe we ought to give a shot at that. Maybe we can, from the south, maybe we can make it up there. And Captain Swanson at the time, very great man, said, well, call the district in Cleveland and see if they will let you go. So we gave them a call and they said, give it a shot. So now this is going to be straight. Jack Rittercher, remember that name, he was my co-pilot on this mission. And we flew up Lake Huron, and snowing and everything. We were about 200-300 feet above the ground, snowing and icing and so forth. And we didn't know exactly where this Nordmeer was. So we got to the end of the point up there, the finger, and we said, okay, well, we'll fly out in this direction for 30 minutes. And if we don't find it, then we'll start a search coming back in. So we started timing and flew out for 30 minutes. And Jack says, okay, Lonnie, says, time's up. I said, well, let's just go 1 more minute. Why? I don't know. 1 more minute was getting ready to turn around, and we were right over.
Oh my.
Can you believe it? I mean, to me, it's just fate. You talk about the good Lord using you as a tool. That's it. And on the ship, they were ground, so we could only carry 4 at a time in the helicopter. This was a single engine, so we hoisted 4 of them. Now, the Coast Guard cutter Mackinac, which is an icebreaker, was about 500 yards away, but the sea was so heavy, they could not get a small boat down to go rescue the people. So we thought, well, we can take these people to land and put them down. And said, no, let's put them over on the icebreaker, because if we don't, it'll be dark by the time we get back out here. So we hoisted the 4 from the Nordmeer, took them over to the Mackinac, lowered them to the deck there, because it was pretty tough, the heaving deck and so forth. We got all 8 of them off, and then we went into the Air Force Base. I forget the name of the base up there in Michigan, to refuel. We were running low on fuel. And just as we landed there to get fuel, we heard on the radio that the Nordmeer had broken in half.
Oh my.
Now, isn't that something?
Oh, wow.
It's always fascinated me that we did that extra minute for no reason, and had those people, had we not done that, that's to me, that's fascinating, those kinds of things.
There is a higher power.
It is, and it's great.
That's wonderful. And the other one that I saw or read was associated with a rescue attempt, I think it was, in Vietnam. Is that correct? The other DFC?
No, that was, I had a Silver Star for an attempt that we weren't able to get. That was We were on a training mission out of, luckily I was an instructor pilot in the Air Force, and we weren't flying Michigans. We'd take the co-pilots out and be training them and flying and so forth. So I was on a training mission this day, and there at Da Nang Air Force Base. And we got a call and said that a helicopter had been shot up pretty bad trying to make an extraction up north of the DMZ. And they wanted us to go up there, divert, and go up there to back them up, back the next crew up. So we got there, and actually the second helicopter had gone in to try to make the rescue. And he had gotten shot up pretty bad, so he had to leave. We got there, it was just, maybe half an hour before dark, really close. And they had the A1Es, the SPADs flying in, they did, and the F4s going in and dropping ordnance all around where this guy was. You know, it's jungle, you couldn't really see anything, just the jungle tops. So finally they said, okay, Jolly Green, or whatever my number was, says, okay, you're cleared to go in and make an attempt. So we went in and had the guy, he had popped smoke, so it was coming up through the canopy, so we could see about where he was. We went in and got established a hover, and was sort of looking around trying to get directly over, and then we started taking all sorts of ground fire, and you know, caution lights coming on and dust coming out, so we got out okay there. Went back up to altitude of about 1,000 feet, and the SPADs came in again and says, okay, well, we'll sanitize the area again. So my other helicopter, he says, well, we'll go in and give it an effort this time. I said, no, we're going to go back in because if something happens, we want a good helicopter to be able to, you know, rescue them. So anyway, we went back in again, and now it was right at dark, and tracers flying. It was like you see in the movies, you know, that kind of thing. And sure enough, as soon as we got in, we started taking ground fire again all over the place, and luckily we got out and weren't able to do any more that night, so we went back to Quang Tri Marine Base and stayed the night. And they were nice enough to bring us up a new helicopter overnight so we could go back in the next morning. And so we got up the next morning and went in. I guess we were probably maybe 45 minutes from Quang Tri, where we'd spent the night at the Marine Corps base, up to the location. We got up there and they said, okay, we're ready to go. And we had fuel tanks. Each one carried 200 gallons. So, and in that atmosphere, you have to be as light as you can, the helicopter. So what we did is we dropped the fuel tanks and went in getting ready to make the approach. And they said, well, hold off a minute. We see some more ground fire down there. So we went back up and started orbiting. So I'm starting to run low on fuel now because I'd already prepared to go and make the rest of it. So about 15 minutes, I said, look, guys, I've got to get some gas. So I said, okay, we'll go. So I headed back to get gas. And while I was gone, the second group of helicopters had him go in, and luckily he was able to get the guy out.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
But I will tell you another thing I think that's rather strange, if you will. Remember I'd mentioned Jack Riddell, who was my co-pilot? Well, 3 helicopter pilots from the Coast Guard were selected for the exchange program. I was one, Jack Riddell was another one, who was my assistant operations officer at Detroit. When we got to Da Nang, we checked in, and this Air Force lieutenant walked up and says, Lonnie Mixon, says, I know you, says, you know, you were a counselor at Camp Cullen back when I was in grammar school. I said, Dickie Yeen, that's right, you sure were. In high school, between our junior and senior years, the football coach handled Camp Cullen, and he'd take 6 of the football players over to give us a job during the summertime. And here's little Dickie Yeen. I guess he was 6 years old at the time, something like that. Back in Vietnam, here's Dickie Yeen, this little kid I knew at Cullen here in Fairhope. And here's Jack Riddell, who was with me, okay. Had a mission, it was June the 9th. I'll never forget it. I'd gotten called, I was the ready pilot. We got called, we went out at about 5 o'clock in the morning, went out to the make a rescue. There was an Army pilot and his co-pilot were down. I went out and we had to be on scene at daylight, so we went out and picked them up. Got back to the base. Now it was about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and time to change crews. I was going off, and here is Jack Riddell and Dick Yeen. They were going to they had another mission waiting to go. So they gave them the helicopter that I had just gotten out of. They fueled it. They got in the helicopter that I got out of and took off on this mission. I filled out the paperwork, went back up and was getting breakfast. And the officer called me, says, the airplane just got shot down. They were both killed
Oh.
right there,
Oh.
you know, an hour later. I mean, to me, you know, that common thread, it's sort of scary when you
Yeah.
stop and think about it.
Yeah.
Knowing Dickie Ying, Jack Riddicher, and here, who would have ever thought they'd even see two of them, but three of them, getting out of the airplane that I had just flown and got shot down like that. It's just, it's we're eerie, you know, really.
The grace of God.
It is, it is.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. How about an interesting and fun story out of your service?
Well, the fun part's when you always get back home.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You know, one of the ones was, well, I'll tell you a fun thing. Of course, you being the Navy, you know, there at Da Nang, they had hospital ships, the Coast Guard, I mean the cutter, not cutter, but the hospital ship Repose and the Sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, before I got to Vietnam, for some reason the nurses had come to the officers club in Da Nang, and one of the Air Force pilots was a good friend of mine, Joe Green, had fallen in love with one of these nurses out there. But they were on the ship and we were on the shore type thing. So he says, Lonnie, what can we do to get out to that ship? I said, well, I got some Coast Guard buddies over here, you know, at the base, Da Nang base. So I called my friend over there, said, we've got an outboard motor. You can go out there and use it and go out. It was a Sunday afternoon. So Joe Green and I get in the outboard motor here at Da Nang in the bay harbor thing, go out to the sanctuary, and there was an admiral's barge that was at the thing, so we had to go around back, and they had the Jacob's ladder. So here Joe Green's up this Jacob's ladder, if you know what that is, just dangling on. He made it up there. But anyway, we got there, and I finally got up there myself and had a cup of coffee, and we stayed about an hour. And coming back in, a storm came. And here we are in this little outboard motor, you know, coming back in. We just about drenched and had to be rescued ourselves. But that was one of the funny things you get to do.
I think one of the things I find is guys have stories about the things they did, but then they also have fun stories.
Mm-hmm.
The fun stories are part of what it is,
Mm-hmm.
because in the worst of conditions, guys can find a way to have fun.
You've got to have a sense of humor, that's right.
Yeah. And so,
Well, one thing I'll tell you a little bit different too, when Lance Egan was the other coastie, the third coastie, when we spent 6 months in Da Nang, and then we were going to Nakhon Phanom. When we got ready to leave our last night in Da Nang, we had a party, and we had our wives send our uniforms over our whites, dress whites. So we went to the officers club, and the two of us, you know, the only Navy, they were, you know, whites and everything, and we invited all the nurses. So the two of us, and we had about 15 nurses there having a party, going away party at Da Nang. So that was very memorable.
that's good. Retired in 1973 as a full commander.
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
Yeah. And, wow. Let's see. Oh, I saw something very interesting. You were inducted into the Alabama Hall of Fame.
Hall of Honor, yes.
Hall of Honor,
yes,
I'm
that
sorry.
was
Hall of
quite
Honor.
an honor,
Yeah.
right? That's in
Yeah.
Marion, Alabama.
Yeah.
It's a great school up there they have. And I was inducted in, let's see, in 2001, I guess, 2001 I was inducted.
Yeah, 2001.
Very.
That's real nice having an honor like that.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's very humbling.
Yeah. And let's see. I'm the Albatross.
Oh, there was.
What an interesting bird that is to fly.
Mhm, it is.
And,
I loved it.
you got any comments about her?
Just loved it. Well, a couple, I guess. You know the one that's over here by the battleship,
Uh-huh.
the 2129?
Yeah.
I flew that airplane in Miami.
Oh my.
Many times.
Yeah.
It's like, when we were in Miami, flying down there, it was so romantic. We flew down where in Biscayne Bay, and I remember Flipper series.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, they filmed all of that down there, and we were very active in supporting that. And I remember the very first show that they made, I was flying an Albatross, and we were coming in over the ocean and right to the island, and got right to the island and pull up. You know, they're filming from on the ground and seeing them come straight at them. So we flew this over and over and over, I guess, you know. So And so finally, the last time we would end it, pulled up and we zap. What was it? We'd hit the trees, you know, the branches coming in. And there's, in the windshield wiper, there was a leaves sitting up there. And we had to land, and lo and behold, we were supposed to pick up an admiral as soon as we landed and take him down to Key West. So as we were taxiing in, we had the co-pilot reach out and take the limbs that were stuck in the windshield wiper out so he wouldn't see them. But no, that was a lovely airplane. Great flying, just so forgiving, but you could stay airborne for 12, 15 hours. And like I said, and the excitement of landing on the water at night and take off at night is just great. Yeah.
She was a real horse, wasn't she?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. Well, flying in Miami in that time was just a wonderful thing.
It was. It really was.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Anything else that comes to mind that you might want to say?
Oh gosh, no. I was extremely lucky in getting to go many places, and one of the things I enjoyed a great deal the last 3 years before I retired, being an instructor pilot, I got to go to all of the Coast Guard air stations. As we were transitioning into the new helicopter, I would go and stay 4 to 5 weeks and fly with each pilot, going through a training syllabus there. So I got to go to Puerto Rico and to Alaska and every Coast Guard air station, which that was very, very nice.
That would have been great. Yeah.
And then on top of that, getting inducted in the Coast Guard Hall of Honor, that was gravy on top of it all.
Oh yeah. And that was the last full amphibious helicopter they had, right?
Yes, they did. The first one was they call the Sea Guard. That was a single engine. That's one I was flying up in Detroit and Miami. When I got back from Vietnam, we had retired all of those and were transitioning into what they call the Pelican. This is the twin engine amphibian helicopter.
Right.
And I guess that stayed around about almost 10 years or more. Until then they came up with the Ariels, and I wouldn't know what to do to fly one that you couldn't land on the water. It'd be strange.
Yeah. What did he do when he retired? What did he do when he retired?
Oh yeah, after you retired, I guess you came to Fairhope, right?
Well, no, really. I started out in Mobile, and I moved to Daphne actually in 1977. Piddled around a little bit in real estate and different things, did some aerial photography, and this friend of mine says, they're looking for a trustee in the federal bankruptcy court. I said, oh, what's that? He said, I don't know. So but I said, they're looking for one. So I said, sounds like it, something different. So I went down and talked to the guy down there. He said, yeah, fill out these papers and we'll see. And I guess they sent them into the Justice Department. And about 6 weeks later, I got a letter back saying, Zap, you're a trustee in the federal bankruptcy court system. And I've been doing that for about 27 years now. And that's extremely exciting and different.
What does a trustee in the bankruptcy court do?
Well, what you really do is you look at the assets of the person who files bankruptcy, make sure that he doesn't have more than he's supposed to by state law, and also represent the unsecured creditors. Anything that we can find, any assets, my job is to reduce that to money, and then the court will tell me who to give the money to as far as the creditors and so forth. And you never know when you open up a new case what it's going to be like. I related that to sort of like being search and rescue. You never know, like you get a call in the middle of the night, you go out, you don't know what the conditions are going to be. Here, when I get a new bankruptcy case, I never know what it's going to be. I remember one time I got appointed a case. It was about 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. It was a dairy farmer up in Atmore, and they had 60 cows, and the guy who owned it had run off with six cows up there. They had milk. You can't do anything milk. So I spent until midnight on the phone, luckily finding a guy that would buy the cows, and I met him up there at daylight the next morning to buy the cows so he could and had his people there to milk them. So, things like that. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
It is.
That is amazing.
Yeah. It is.
And you're a part of the city government in Fairhope these days?
Yeah, that's quite different, I tell you for sure. I live in Creek, and we had they have a connectivity thing, and they said that each community has to be connected to the other one for fire and so forth, or ambulances. And they were opening up a new road through Quail Creek, and we didn't quite think that that was right. So a group of us from Quail Creek went to a meeting, the planning and zoning meeting one night, and we just about got laughed out of the room, you know. So we got back and we started saying, well, man, we need to do something, you know. That just didn't right. So we spent about 6 or 8 months. There were about 15 people around. Said, well, we knew that Cecil Christianberry was going to retire. Said, well, we need to get somebody to run and get on the city council and do something. And lo and behold, I drew the short straw. It was not on my plate to be a politician, but I was asked to do it, and so that's the reason. And luckily, then I won the position, and so I've been doing that for 2.5 years now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of backed into that one, huh?
I did.
Yeah. One of the things that's a local piece of history here. Do you have any relationship, or do you remember the Ghost Fleet that happened after the World War II? Well, you were a young fellow.
I was
at that
not, but I
time.
remember. Yes,
Yeah.
I've been up the river, and I've seen all the ships tied up. The Liberty ships, I think, that were
What a
tied up there.
remarkable scene that
It
must
is.
have been.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, it's all gone now, but yeah, that's amazing. Okay, well, I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lonnie. I really appreciate your
Good.
coming forward and interviewing.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It was lovely. It's wonderful. Very fluid interview.
Oh,
Good.
yeah, well, that's good. He's an easy subject.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
wonderful, isn't he?
Just to get him to start talking about something. That was
Yeah,